You're listening to Simple Roots Radio, episode number 217, and today we're talking about rhythms. Why rhythms matter. It sounds boring, but rhythms have completely transformed my life, and I know it can yours as well.
Welcome to Simple Roots Radio with Alexa Sherm. Alexa believes that simplicity in life is the key to achieving true and lasting health. And now your host, Alexa Sherm.
Welcome back to this podcast. My name's Alexa, and this is the place to get healthy, live happy, find more joy, and today you're going to learn how to do all three through creating healthy rhythms that last. Now, if you've been around a while, you know I'm a big fan of rhythms over habits, but really creating these routines in your life that are foundational and centered and creating health inside your body. Now, today on the show, I asked Rebekah Lyon, who is a national best-selling author and speaker of books such as Rhythms of Renewal, which is specifically what we're going to talk about today, all about trading stress and anxiety for a life of peace and purpose. But she's also written You Are Free and Free Fall to Fly. Rebekah is one of the most caring and honest voices, openly revealing her own battles to overcome anxiety and depression and encourage you to discover and build a life living your God-given purpose from a place of freedom. I am honored to have Rebekah on the show as we dive into rhythms of renewal and how shifting your focus to rhythms over other things can override a multitude of pains inside life and really help you transition from wanting to do something, from just doing it for the sake of doing it, to making it a part of who you are. And that's what we talk about today in the show. So I am excited and I want you to stay tuned because I think you are going to love it as well. Now, before we get to today's show, I have to remind you that Health Made Simple is open. Yes, I'm going to scream it from the rooftops because of anything I've ever created, this is the class that I am the most proud of. And I don't even say that from me. This is really a message that was birthed from God. Like, this is a message that He wants you to hear. And it's definitely a message that will change your entire perspective about your body and help you to truly understand what health means for you. It's redesigning health, and in the midst of that, designing a life of health that you love. It's creating freedom from food, it's creating freedom from your body, and it's truly allowing you to step up to be the person that you were designed. Okay, I know that's all mushy-gushy stuff, but don't worry. We also dive into weight loss and hormonal issues and immune function and the health of the nervous system. All of those things are inside the class because really what you need to know is you need to understand how the body works so you know how to fill it with healthy rhythms and routines that are going to completely revamp your health and your energy levels without excess work and without the stress of diets and all the other stuff that we think it takes to get healthy. We're throwing that all out the window and walking you through a process of truly making health who you are. So I'm super pumped about that. To get involved in Health Made Simple, which there are a limited number of slots, so you're going to want to sign up soon. You can find all that information at simplerootswellness.com/healthmadesimple, which is all one word. Registration ends on May 28th to get involved in the summer session of Health Made Simple. I'm so thrilled, and there's so many good things coming your way. You really should check it out. You can find all of that at simplerootswellness.com/healthmadesimple. But for now, let's get right to the show and welcome Rebekah to talk all about Rhythms of Renewal. Rebekah, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so this podcast, I've been so looking forward to it because you recently released a book on Rhythms of Renewal. And rhythms is something I've talked a lot about, and I just loved your perspective of having 4 solid rhythms in life that really can shape a person. And I don't think there's a better time to talk about this than now in the midst of what we're going through. And so I just want to talk first, where did you get the idea from this book? When did you realize, like, maybe I needed some more structure, some more rhythms in my life?
Sure. I wanted to have a comprehensive view of the whole person. And these 4 rhythms are the 4 quadrants that I believe make up a whole person. And it came out of a season of having a decade ago panic attacks that lasted almost a year and a half, and feeling like I lost my whole person. I don't even know who she was, where she went. I was coming out of 10 years of having toddlers at home and my youngest starting kindergarten. And we had moved to Manhattan from the suburbs of the South. And it was this midlife reset where I was trying to reawaken and rediscover who in the world I was. And it was because I finally had a minute to think about it. Like my firstborn son in 2001, I found 6 hours later after he was born, the doctor said, we see signs of Down syndrome in your baby. And that was confirmed with a geneticist 6 days later. So my entree to motherhood at 26 was a child with Down syndrome who needed 8 hours of therapy within about 8 months each week. I was leading a team at our large church, and I realized that I had to choose because I was kind of floundering with this new reality. And so I stepped away when he was 8 months old, and I basically was home while my other two were born and raised, and all the way until they were going to school. So that whole decade in its entirety, going into it, I was going to work like my mom did. She was a teacher. She was working when I was working. She was home when we were home. And I was very driven, type A, firstborn. And that changed abruptly. And so it reoriented that decade for me. And so I found myself putting my whole person in the role of wife and mother. And that's fine because that was a season and that was a role and a responsibility. But I knew that I'm a person, there's a whole picture of all of us, that isn't defined specifically just by our roles and our relationships. And so when my youngest went to kindergarten, we had moved to Manhattan, and I was like, well, I have from 8 to 3 every day to figure out who the heck I am or where did she go? And I was reminded that in college, I was a communications major, PR, graphic design, layout and typography, aesthetic. I love interior design, fashion. So I started taking night classes at Parsons School of Design with kids half my age, but I would just go down to Union Square and try to be cool and pretend and jump into fashion and interior design. And in that same season, I started having panic attacks because we had moved to New York, 8 million people in 11 miles. And I just it was as if something was trying to come out. I was exposed to a deeper truth was that I was trying to strive into a life that I wanted to orchestrate. And I had to kind of get to the end of myself in that season, because I would have never guessed in that moment that I would be a writer and that I would be an author or that I'd be a teacher. That was not even in my wheelhouse. But I do remember my mom pushing my son on a swing in my mid-30s, casually saying, I always thought you'd write. And I was like, that would have been super helpful when I was picking a major. I just never saw myself with that identity, but I grew up reading books voraciously. I was called Becca Book, and we didn't have a TV. So I learned about life through the power of story, and it would make sense that readers make writers. So fast forward, that panic season happened. I walked out of it. I walked out of a healing journey after a couple of years, and I started to write about it. But this whole picture of rest, restore, connect, create helped me even now that I've been a mom now for almost 20 years. I have a 19-year-old, right? So we're a couple decades into this. And I think it's important to know that we don't really wake into the holistic, best version of ourselves until we've walked through roles and we've walked through seasons and we've walked through eras and we've seen how much more that's enhanced who we are and what God imagined when he designed us or knit us. And I guess we adopted a little girl 15 months ago from China, and she is a kindergartner and she has Down syndrome. So I kind of joke there are bookends. Yeah. And we have 3 high schoolers in a kindergarten, and it's almost as if God again was it was in the writing of this book. He was reminding me what I see in you right now is a whole picture of who I have for you. It's you living generously from your whole heart, and you are resting. So rest, let me just explain the 4 rhythms. Rest is the inner life. It's the spiritual life. It's basically between us and God going, am I okay? Are we okay? Is my heart wounded, hurting? What emotions are of anger or resentment or bitterness am I holding on to? Is there guilt or shame or grief that's unresolved? I want to bring these to you. So the rest rhythm invites you into that as a foundation, because you can't be healthy emotionally, spiritually, physically, relationally if your inner life is broken, right? If your heart is broken. And so the rest rhythm is the beginning, and I write very practical expressions for each rhythm. Morning routine, silence the noise, tech detox, routines for deep sleep. Take inventory of your life. What's right, what's wrong, get quiet. examine the heart. Like, it's just all real practical, small vignettes of like how to jump into this inner life rest rhythm.
Mhm.
And then once you do that, you go to restore, which is physical. Like, is my body fatigued all the time? Because you can want whatever you want, but if you're too tired and you don't eat right and you don't sleep,
Right.
and your mind is racing, like, you're never going to get to what you want. You're never going to, your body's not going to let you get there. Even if your heart's doing better, your body still needs practical, actionable things. So I started writing chapters in the restore rhythm about physical health. So you've got spiritual health is rest, restore is physical health. And physical health is all about brain food and seeking adventure and getting outside and raising serotonin in your brain when you take walks or get out in nature or raise your heart rate. And it's all, again, these practical, tangible steps to go get you out your funk, get out the door, like get out the door, go. And if you are tired of Groundhog's Day, figure out how to seek adventure in your life. Like, make sure that you don't just sit on your couch because you want to do the thing, but you won't. So that physical life to me is very important before you get to like your call, your vocation, your work, your relationships, because you can't bring the best self of you to those things if you don't take time to invest. And so these input rhythms are really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love them all. And I think that you made one really good point at the very beginning when you said you can't really come into your own until you've lived this life. And I feel like so many people are just out here chasing what they think is a better version of themselves, or finding it that they miss all along. Like, that there are other components to living a nourished life, to creating these rhythms. Like, we're so busy, like, get back up, hustle, work, like that whole lifestyle of just keep going, never spend time for yourself. Like, that's a really hard message to break. How did you figure this out? Like, how did you come to this place of like, no, enough?
Yeah. Well, I had to live these rhythms starting a few years before I wrote them, because I had a relapse moment. And that's how I begin the book, of where I had 7 years go by where I didn't have a panic attack. And then all of a sudden I was faced with a situation where I had the worst one I'd ever had. And I was covered with shame. And I thought, am I a fraud? I've been teaching all this emotional wellness, this health. And here I am having the worst panic attack of my entire life. And the truth that I really received from God in that season was like, Rebekah, I don't promise that the temptation to fear won't come knocking, because it will. It will. Like, you live in a world of frenetic activity, and there are things to be scared of, But he says, but he said to me, he's like, what I sensed in my spirit was like, but I will always make a way of escape. Like, basically, there's going to be the temptation to fear, to curl up, to get in the fetal position on your closet floor and just say, will I always struggle with anxiety? Will I always struggle with depression? He's like, the temptation will come when you're out of rhythm and you don't have these healthy things in your life. But these rhythms are actually a way of escape. They actually are a way of like, I will be near you. I will breathe life into you. I'm the author of life. I will help you get back up. Right. And what you'll take with you from those hardship seasons, like COVID, like where we are right now, what you'll take from this season is that God was still present. Yeah. And that while you had a couple moments where you're like, I am bailing, I am running, I don't even have anywhere to go, but I'm running. I don't even fight or flight is in full mode right now. God is going like, guess what? I'm with you in this place of sadness or discouragement or defeat or suffering or strife at home or whatever it is. I'm with you, and I'm going to give you new grace and new mercy to actually tackle it new tomorrow. Like in the morning, like I will give you perspective. I'll give you insight. I'll give you grace and patience. I'll allow you to actually hear from someone you weren't expecting that will remind you to take it easy on yourself. And the biggest truth, honestly, I've learned in this last couple of weeks, like month of quarantine is, Rebekah, you don't have to make things happen. The lie of hustle, the lie of striving, the lie of the culture right now is, oh my gosh, everyone's freaking out. We have got to make crap happen now. It's double down time. And yet the truth is God's actually saying, and I believe like for me, It's like you need to actually pull some things off your plate that really weren't in the center of what you were made to do. You need to narrow the focus, get laser sharp on what it is that brings life to you. And yes, of course, we all need income. We all need paychecks. We all need sustainability. That's true. But I do think when you listen to the voice of going, this is what I was made to do. Like this, it brings me so much energy, so much motivation. I come alive in it. Then all of a sudden, like resource follows that, right? When you're doing the thing that like, you're just like, I'm alive right now. This is joyful for me to do this. I would do it for free. The beauty is resource follows.
Yeah.
Because it's contagious. Like freedom is contagious. And when we see somebody offering something that clearly is bringing them life, like we're like, well, I could use some of that too, you know? And so I guess it's encouragement. And the last two rhythms real quick is connect and create. Connect is all about relational health. I think we all need to pay attention to this. And I think quarantine has forced this, right?
Yeah.
Are we feeling it so much at work that we're ignoring our kids or our spouse? Are we dusting things under the rug we never want to talk about? Are there addictions that are hidden? Are there like all this stuff gets exposed when we're in like this forced timeout? And so it's painful, but it's revealing, and you cannot heal what is hidden. So when you start to uncover some things because you're always around each other, you are able to get to the root of some things that might have healing. So I think a lot of people in this season of quarantine are going either I'm going to crash and burn or I'm going to get free. And I think the answer to that question is clearly contingent on how willing are you to be vulnerable fully? How willing are you to be honest and to choose to not stonewall, but to go, hey, I'm going to let you in on the places I've shut down. And I think that's really important for kids, for teens, for marriages, for extended family, whatever that looks like. Because we were never made to walk through life alone.
Yeah.
And I think achievement can be like what happens is we're all searching for love, but we'll settle for admiration instead. And that's a slippery slope because it's lonely at the top is an adage because it's true. Like if you have lost all your intimacy and your need and your vulnerability for community to get to the top, then the top is actually an idol and it offers nothing. And it promises everything, but delivers nothing. Like you, in the end, are still alone. And so I think this connect rhythm is really important in this season to lean into while it's painful to go, God, what is hidden that you want to heal? I mean, I'm trying, and it's going to be messy and bumpy and ugly. Trust me. But I don't want us to lose this moment because we might not get something like quite like this again. And it's permission to go there when we normally would rather just distract ourselves or go on TikTok, right?
Right.
It's like we could lose a whole life lesson in this season because of TikTok alone. And it's not because I hate TikTok. I don't. But I'm just like, the point is here that we get honest. That's the point. And we pause. And then the final rhythm is create, and that's our vocation. And it is about doing the thing that makes you come alive, which I already addressed, but it's doing with the people you love, because that's where the joy, like the fullness really is. So those are the 4 quadrants.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you had to say about people kind of falling down the trap that admiration is a form of love. I mean, I think in this life of chasing big dreams and doing all these things, like I think at the end of the day, we are chasing a sense of love instead of just living loved. And even when you bring up loneliness, you know, like we talk about how we are friends with more people than ever before, or quote unquote friends with more people than ever before. But at the same time, we're the loneliest generation. And there's something to rest and going back to God's grace that fills us in a way that no other human can fill us. And it seems like this backward approach of like connecting and getting quiet is actually a form of feeling loved. Can you talk anything about that and what you found in that?
Yeah, I was always an extrovert, I thought, growing up. Like, you know, just leader, firstborn. I just like wanted a party at all times.
Yeah.
And something about motherhood, I think, just kind of shifted where I was like, please don't follow me to the bathroom. Please, like, let me take a shower by myself. Come on. And then we just adopted a sweet girl a year ago who's been in an orphanage her whole life. She was abandoned at 4 months. So she's never had a mom. So when she looks at me jumping in the shower, she's like, can I take a shower? And I'm like, yes, because I'm just kind of like, there's a side of me that's like, okay, she's wanting to be around me at all times. And we've already done that. We did that. We went through that phase, like with my other 3 a decade ago. But I realized like part of what we're all making up for, I think as adults, what we are trying to make up for is a little loss of intimacy when we were young. There is some loss of intimacy or vulnerability at some point in our lives of our childhood that either we had to grow out of something, or we were kind of, we read between the lines, because kids are very intuitive, that like, these are the things you talk about. These are the things you don't. These are the times you feel safe. These are the times you don't. And what happens is when we never really get resolved in our own like nuclear families, take those questions into adulthood, and we try to, in some ways, answer them through our achievements. We try to wrestle them down through our achievements, because achievements shows that, well, we can accomplish things. There is good things that comes from hard things, and it is supposed to make up for all of it. But the problem is it doesn't. It actually, there was a quote I wrote in my second book, that public affection cannot heal private rejection. Like no matter how many likes or retweets or book sales or admiration that I get, that doesn't heal a heart that was wounded. It actually doesn't. And when I think about that in an honest way, like I don't hold any bitterness or resentment to one particular person or thing or circumstance. It's not like that. See, chronic trauma, really a lot of us are just raised in a setting of chronic trauma, which trauma, all it means is somebody overparented or underparented. It doesn't mean that you were abused necessarily. It doesn't mean you had this like horrific incident. It just means that somewhere growing up in your upbringing, the way you receive things, it was either too much or not enough. And that's not to like throw any stones at anybody, because trust me, my kids are going to say the same thing about me, because I'm not God. I'm not God. I can't be the perfect, appropriate measure of everything they need at all times. But that's why we have a God. That's why we have faith. That's in so many ways. I go, God, you are a source of not being too much or not enough for me. Like you basically let me come as I am, and you meet me there, and you let me kind of process these things with you, so that I'm not trying to I'm not trying to overreach or make up for whatever was lost in my achieving, like trying to validate my worth in my achieving as an adult. And that's hard, because I think sometimes our worth is very much attached to our latest accomplishment. And which is why like it's very satisfying for a season, like I've had 3 best-selling books that are very satisfying in that season. There's a lot of joy and gladness and celebration, but then you're like, oh wait, this next book actually like your book was nothing compared, you know what I mean? Like there's always going to be something greater. There's always going to be something lesser to compare. And that's obviously we know comparison's the thief of joy. So it's kind of this idea of back going like, what are the motivations behind this? They can't heal a heart wounded. They really should be like all the work we create, the craft, the art, whatever it is we produce in life should come from the overflow of abundance in our hearts. Well, that can only happen from healing. So I don't even know that's what you asked.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is like just going back to the source. Like you said, I think sometimes we try to give ourselves way more power than we were ever created to have. And I think about this even in the health space of like, so many people are just living for their health. And I think a lot of times it's just the chase to try to achieve something, like you said, that was probably missing or void at some point in their life. And what we know and why I've gotten more into the faith aspect of this is because I've helped people get there, and it's not satisfying. It's not as fulfilling as they think it is. And so then there's always another chase. And I've kind of thought that like chasing is a sense of closing down in a way to like the flow of God and like what he's trying to do in our life, and the flow of love outward to other people in life and even to yourself. So going along with like the idea of rhythms and creating these rhythms, I'm a really big person that there's a lot of seasonality to it. And I think that our life feels so, like we can kind of get into this, like what looks normal for us. And now it's like complete opposite of normal, but maybe it's just a different season, right? Like I think trying to be so static minded with how life is working is just an unrealistic way to live. Because like you said, you've gone through decades of being a parent and now you have a kindergartner and you have high schoolers. Like, your season is completely flipped on its head since adoption. Like how have you taken rhythms and not made them so static that if a new season comes, you can't be willing to change and flow with that season? Is that question making sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, rhythms, the rhythm of waking and eating and sleeping and being in relationship and crying out to God or prayer or morning meditation, whatever that looks like, and going to work, those are never going to end. We will just be doing them in a different setting with different ages and different seasons of life and different members joining you. But those things never end. So what like eating never becomes static because it's like it's life-giving, right?
Right.
You can choose to eat the same exact thing every day if you really wanted to, or you could go be like, I was really into avocado toast like in August, and now I'm just doing like a smoothie or an acai bowl in the morning. It's like, great. You're just being nimble in whatever is kind of bringing you life in that season and feels like you're enjoying. And I really appreciate the dynamic part of rhythms is like, I'm still walking and using the same legs I was using at 13, but I'm getting a little more like in this season. If it's hot out, I get up at 7 a.m. and I walk a 4-mile trail with my husband and we talk and we grab coffee right before we go and we dream a little bit. And, that looks different than it did, a decade ago when I was like hauling 3 kids to Gold's Gym and putting them in childcare just so I could get on a treadmill. Right. Like it was still the restore rhythm. I was still eating then and working out or doing something to move my body. But whatever season you're in invites you to be creative on like, what does taking a walk look like today than it did like 20 years ago? Or what does like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone look like today versus, what does eating smart look like today versus a year ago or 10 years ago? So I feel like rhythms are broad, sweeping. Like the practices themselves might feel like redundant, but the way in which you do them are completely contingent on your season. And so they're always changing.
Yeah. So you have to be willing to just kind of ebb and flow throughout the different seasons of life.
Yeah.
So
your morning routine, like my morning routine when I had newborns looked very different than it does now. Right. I actually get to have one. Like my morning routine with like toddlers was, oh, wow, I guess someone wet their bed and I'm up from 3 to 4 and then I'm up again at 5 trying to nurse my infant. And now it's like, oh, I actually get from 7 to 9 and I have more time because the teens are sleeping in a little bit and we're homeschooling virtually.
Yeah. So as you've incorporated these rhythms, I think one big thing that I have is like, oh, people want to change. They want to do this, but there's always the give and take. Like even like when you hear people are like, oh, I want to get in the Bible more, but life kind of, like there's all these other things. Did you feel like you had to go through a series of giving up things, or what was your mindset perspective when it came to rhythms and like just sorting through your life and saying like, okay, this is what I'm going to keep and this is what I'm not?
Yeah. Well, the first hour is the rudder for your day. So the first hour of your day sets the tone for the next 15 hours of that day. So for me, morning routine, like abandoning that was not optional because it actually made me like an unkind human to be around. And I was like, I really want my family to actually like me. That would be a plus. So it is not even an optional thing. So yes, other things had to go. Like I will never get up and get on my laptop right out of bed with a cup of coffee. That sounds like death to me because I'm like, I cannot start outputting when I'm not got anything in me that's not mine. Right. So like, I'll start with liturgy, like a book of prayers or a gratitude journal, or sometimes I'll literally just like child's pose. Cause I've come out of years of yoga and I like the posture of surrender and release to receive so that I can receive. And then I'll always like, just end with a prayer, because I was like, God, you gave me this new day. That's just how I see it. Like, I could have died in my sleep last night, right? You gave me a new day. The sun rose. You're still doing what you do in creation. And we've been given a new day. That means all the words that were said yesterday that we regret, or the things we ignored, or the shame we felt, or the shame we projected onto somebody else, is done. And I ask for a reset right now. And I cannot do today differently than yesterday if I don't receive something from you in order to do that right now. Yeah. And so, because it's not optional for me, like, I make time, right? Because I just don't want to be the same person that I was yesterday if I wasn't in a good spot. Like, I don't want her to return. Like, I want to know, like, so sometimes I'll open Psalms, because it's just like prayers of lament, prayers of gratitude, of joy, of celebration. Sometimes I'll read through the New Testament, just the words of Jesus. And peace be with you. My peace I give to you, not as the world gives. I give you peace. I'm like, yes, thank you. I come under your covering of peace. You are my peace, right? And just sometimes we have to read those, and we have to sit with it and meditate and go, thank you. You know, you tell me when I'm anxious. It's like I wake with a verse, like, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and petition with thanksgiving, tell God, like, let those requests be made known, and the peace of God will guard your heart and mind. I'm like, okay, so if I give thanks to you and tell you what's burdening me right now, you'll actually flood me with peace. Why would I not do that? It seems obvious. Like, if I were to actually bring my prayers and my worries to you, you would return with gratitude. You'll return me with a heart of peace. Like, that's what I need right now. So I think I look at the morning routine like that's the input rhythm that's most vital of all. It's just as important as what you eat for breakfast. It literally sets the tone for, and when you have enough morning wins under your belt, 30 days of morning wins where you really took the time, your family will look at you and go, you're not the same person.
Yeah. You'll see that change in all these little rhythms that you do.
Yeah.
So as you've written this book, and it's been released for a while, I'm not sure exactly how long it's been, but
6 months.
Yeah. So what have you learned since launching the book as you continue with these practices? Like, is there anything that surprised you as you've really made this a part of who you are?
Well, I practiced these rhythms for 2 years before it ever came out. So for me, it's not new information at all, but it's been really, really fun and surprising that it's resonated so much for other people. Because you can't write what you haven't already lived. I'm sorry. You can't bring anything with any authority. If it didn't transform you, there's a strong chance it's not going to transform somebody else.
Yeah.
But if it did, and it really is your new way of living, then you're like, oh, wow, this isn't just my new way of living. Other people are doing this too. And now there's a tribe of people that are like sharing their rhythms online. And they're like, oh, we took an evening walk and we watched the sunset, because the sunset releases red light, which is natural melatonin for your body. Like, we actually are. So people will hashtag like Rhythms for Life or Rhythms of Renewal, taking an evening walk with my family. Because I mean, what else can you do at quarantine, right?
Right.
So like, I feel like quarantine was basically set up so that you could live these rhythms without even trying to, because it's like the only thing you can do is think about what you're eating and getting outside.
Right. Yeah. So as we kind of wrap this up, what is like you said the morning routine as one area that's kind of non-negotiable. Is there one routine or one rhythm in there that you've seen repeatedly and people that you've that have read this book, or something that you've seen in your own life that you're like, this is a really great rhythm to start with?
Yeah, I would say for the rest, the morning routine is my game changer. I would say for restore, take a walk. Outside in nature, creation, get as far away from like noise as you can, is actually one of the most restorative things for your anxiety and depression, because serotonin is released. I would say I would say I'm going to give you my favorite for connect, because right now I wish it could be physical touch, like give a hug, but you can't because actually the human touch releases oxytocin, which is connection and belonging. And I think that's why people are suffering right now because we can't actually physically touch.
Oh, it's so hard, isn't it?
Yeah. So make sure you hug the people you can touch, like whoever they are. Make sure you don't just do a high five, like hug the ones you actually can, if they're in your home or immediate family or whatever. And then, but I do think another good one for connect right now is apologize first. Because everyone's fighting. We've seen a lot of each other. If you are with like 6 humans in your home, someone's apologizing every day. So maybe you can lead with that. And then the last one that I think is really essential for the Create Rhythm right now is working with your hands. Don't just zoom your way through the day. Like do something tactile. So cooking, obviously, is a very effortless, like a natural on-ramp to the Create Rhythm. But there's a massive amount of people gardening right now.
I know. Yeah. Crazy amount.
We have just literally cultivated millions of chicken farmers now, apparently, because all of us have coops, right? So we've had chickens for a couple of years. We live on land now in Franklin from New York. This is now my reality, but I'm kind of glad because I was like, this is good. Like we're planting garden beds and we have chickens. And not only that, like I like to make new things with new herbs and just try new things. So learn something new and work with your hands is vital for your rebirth in this quarantine season. Because here's the thing, quarantine didn't just happen, right? Like everything that happens, it does happen for a reason, even if we don't like the reason and we don't understand what it is yet. And we're frustrated that we can't have our old life. The truth is our old life leading into quarantine had 4 out of 5 of us exhibiting physical symptoms of stress. That's when we were living the lives we wanted. So this has been an interruption to that. And what it is offering us is a chance to go, okay, why don't you use a different measure of output? Because the output you were doing prior to this was literally stressing you out to the point where we were having the biggest mental health crisis of the generation. Like we were not being served well going into COVID. So we can't just leave the way we entered. Like we don't want to, like not at all. Like, so what does that mean? Well, all those things that were stripped away, be intentional about what you add back in. Pay attention to what brings positivity and joy. So for me, if like making new recipes are starting to bring joy, yes. If planting seeds makes joy, yes. If, starting to draw again or paint or write music or just do something tactile is bringing joy, pay attention to that because that's what's been lacking all along.
Yeah. This is so good and so practical and really life-giving. And I hope that everyone gets your book, and we're going to talk about that in a second, and just dives into this concept of rhythms because it can really transform your life. I'm a huge believer and I love the work that you've done. So thank you so much for being here and sharing that.
Thank you.
So before we go, I have a few quick fire questions and then I'm going to have you tell us where we can learn more about your work.
Okay.
So the first question is, what's one tool you use to help combat your anxiety?
Oh, goodness.
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I would just say prayer walks. Like I'd usually get out and walk pretty fast. I like brisk walking, like in nature, and then just talking to God about it. Like just processing. I'm a verbal processor, but I can only put my family through so much. Right. So I take that verbal processing to God and go, help me understand what's going on right now. If prayer is not a script. It's not like nobody needs to be intimidated by it. It's like, but I do trust that God hears and listens and gives me discernment as I pray. And so there's a revelation that comes, like a revealing of what's hidden, usually in working that out while I move my body.
Yeah. It's like the double win right there, moving your body while you're praying.
Yeah.
It's like the double-edged sword that you have. What is your favorite book outside of your own, of course, in the Bible?
Man's Search for Meaning by Victor.
Okay. I haven't read that one yet or heard of it. So Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah. It was written in the 1940s by Viktor Frankl, who developed logotherapy, and he survived 4 concentration camps in the Holocaust.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah. It's brilliant. And it basically says meaning. He has a whole psychiatry. He treated suicide patients in Vienna before the war and actually got to where there were not a single suicide patient in the year before the Holocaust began.
Wow.
His goal was that not a single person would commit suicide in the whole city of Vienna before the war, and it happened. And his whole idea is that the root of anxiety is unfulfilled responsibility, which means you're made for meaning, you're made for something, and you're not living into it. And so part of it's figuring out the gap of what you know where you are and what you want to see, what you know what ought to be, and it's helping people bridge that gap. And so he says meaning is defined by your work and your love and your bravery and suffering. I definitely highly recommend it.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. I think I have heard of it, but I'm going to add that to my cart and grab that copy. So one more question. What is the first thing you do every morning for your health in your morning routine? Like, what does your morning routine look like?
Yeah, I start with water, like room temperature with fresh squeezed lemon, because you have to hydrate your organs that are basically dehydrated all night, and it just like clear it out and flush it before you throw caffeine on it, which dehydrates you more. So I start with that, and then coffee, and I do like a non-dairy creamer that I love, Calyptia Farms. And because I did Whole30 3 years ago, and I just cut dairy and gluten for the most part. So that's like my morning. And then I'll immediately open scripture in a journal, and I'll spend about an hour probably total, because I just like, if it's quiet, I'll just take as long as the kids will give me, basically. And I'll start with talking to God, or just like processing the day or the week or whatever. But then I'll usually end with some sort of, after prayer, it's kind of more of like direction. Like, okay, what's going on right now? And what do I want today how do I need to interact today with my people? And how do I need to lead better? So that's like kind of the outflow of that first hour.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. And the last question is, what's the last piece of advice you've heard that you want to leave us with, or that you just want to share with us to give us all a little bit of encouragement in the season?
Okay. Well, the advice is that the lie will tempt you that you're better off alone, because you don't have to deal with stuff. But the truth is, as we all know, you're better together. And advice to kind of reconciling relationship that I was given was give more than you take. And you'll be surprised how it will turn around relationships that seem to have been lost.
Yeah. So good, Rebekah. Okay. Where can we learn more about what you do, find your books, all of that information?
Yeah. Mine is just my handle's my name at RebekahLyons. It's spelled a little different. So at Rebekah Lyons on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My book, like you mentioned, is Rhythms of Renewal, Trading Stress and Anxiety for a Life of Peace and Purpose. And that's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. The one thing that I want to clarify is that I wrote the book so that people would learn how to spell the word rhythm. So I wrote a song. in the middle of the night one night, and it's RHYTHMS. Once you know the song, you won't have to guess. Because so many people were spelling it RY, and it's not. It's RHYTHMS. So a little piece of trivia.
There you go. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your wealth of wisdom with us. And I'm so encouraged by this, and I know everyone else is. So thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was my joy.
Obviously, I love my rhythms a little bit. And what I love most about rhythms is that while you have consistent rhythms, what it really allows you to do is open up and to change your rhythms as your life changes, as the seasonality changes, that you understand and you know how deeply healing rhythms can be, and you desire to continue them, but what that looks like can change. It's also one of the best ways to fill your body with energy. It's these periods of time where you really focus on renewing yourself. These 5-minute chunks during the day or an hour of your morning routine that can really boost your entire body to make it through the day, and not just make it through the day, but to make it through in health and happiness and joy. I love rhythms, and I love the work that Rebekah is doing. If you want to learn more about creating healthy rhythms and the rhythms I've created in my own life, head on over to the show notes at simperitswellness.com/217. I've also linked up all of Rebekah's books, where you can find those and where you can follow her on social media. If you want to learn more about Rebekah, head to our website at RebekahLyons.com. Okay, that's it for today's show. Don't forget to head on over to the show notes. And while you're there, sign up for Health Made Simple. You will not regret it. I can promise you that this can change everything about your health. And I want you to be involved because I believe in you and I believe that you are closer than you think. Head on over there to sign up. And next week, I'm coming back on with a topic that has been the most requested that I have never given any attention to. You're going to want to come back to find out what that topic is, and we're talking about it. So stay tuned, and I will see you back here next week.